Better You starts today. I am the CEO and founder of Vent LLC, and I thank you so much for taking the time to check out this presentation that we're doing today. So today I'm going to be breaking down the top tips for you to land the next job that you're looking for. So in a really simple way, I'm going to teach you from beginning to end how to write a resume that actually works. And I don't know about you, but I know from my lived experience, I had a very hard time finding a job that I was looking for, right? I applied to many places and I over and over again would put applications in, but unfortunately, much to my despair, I did not get the telephone call to come in for an interview. And a part of that was because I didn't quite understand what all should have gone in the resume. What were the nuances, right? What were those little secrets and tips that the hiring managers and HR professionals wanted me to put on my resume, but I didn't know. So today, I'm going to be talking about that with you all right now. Just a little bit about myself before I get started. I'm a business owner, entrepreneur. I'm a professional resume writer, career counselor, and then a soon-to-be psychologist. And I'm also a loving father and a family man, first and foremost. So I just want to help you find your next career and job opportunity that you're looking for. So an overview for today, we're going to talk about the ins and outs, like I said before, of the resume creation process. I'm going to teach you all the free tips, right? So not necessarily the tips that are costly and expensive, but I'm going to teach you all the free ones that you can utilize, okay? And then also I want you to be able to take this knowledge and spread it into your networks and your communities and to teach people the same thing that I'm about to show to you today. So a quick agenda. I'm going to explain what a resume is, what is the history of the resume, major components of a resume as well, tips and tricks, and then lastly, resources for you all. So before I get started, I think it's important that I mention to you my job search. Okay, this was about 10, 15 years ago. I know, I look confused, I look pitiful at the time. And I was looking for work. I think at this time I had recently just graduated high school, and I was on the ropes in terms of whether or not I wanted to go to school. But I definitely knew I needed to start working to put some money in my pocket, right? And I'm sure a lot of you can attest to that as well. And I remember feeling so frustrated. I remember feeling like I was worthless. I remember feeling rejected. I remember feeling like I wasn't worth having a job that paid decently, that paid livable wages where I could feel excited and have meaning. I had a very hard time dealing with rejection specifically from jobs. And it wasn't until, I started to learn a little bit more about resumes and how important this piece of paper really is to get into the interview process. And fast forward to today, now I sit before you all, with some knowledge to be able to impart to you. So what is a resume anyway? So at this component, this part, we're going to really get into the brass tacks of what is the resume itself, right? I want to first mention and say this particular point before we even get into this, is that the resume really is a subjective piece of paper. Now, people place a lot of objectivity in it, but really it's subjective, right? There's no, one resume fits all. If you ask someone like, what should I put on a resume? You will hear thousands of stories that try to get you to write a resume the way that someone else has thought about it, right? It is indeed very subjective, okay? And don't feel bad if you're not necessarily getting those phone calls that you feel like you should get for your interviews. Recognize that it is a very, very subjective piece of document. So a resume ultimately is a document that highlights your professional experience. It is a snapshot, so to speak, of what you do and what you could do in an organization, okay? Employers use this document to decide if they want to invite you, the candidate, in for an interview. Like I said, it's very subjective, right? This little piece of paper has a significant amount of weight in terms of your potential career opportunity. So this is not a lighthearted thing, okay? Also, sometimes a resume can be called or derived as a CV, which is more so in an academic sense or an international basis, which is more so a longer version of your kind of work and lived experiences, right? So if you had presentations that you did, you'd list those presentations. You would list classes that you took. I mean, it's a very extensive document that is not a snapshot, but a really deep explanation of who you are and what you've done, okay? But in the United States, we typically do the shorthand version of a resume. And also a resume in most cases can be the key that grants you access to have opportunities that get you going in the right path for your life. This is something that is very interesting to most folks, okay? You have literally 4 to 6 seconds to impress a hiring manager or resume writer. Yes, 4 to 6 seconds. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. At that point, you're either placed in a yes or no pile. And that's what I mentioned earlier, is that it is a very subjective process. And we want to be able to present ourselves in the best way possible in this subjective process. So in other words, a resume is like Tinder, very subjective. Either you're swiping left or you're swiping right, okay? And I hate to make this analogy, but it is very true though. It's that subjective. And so don't take it personal, right? If you don't get a phone call for things like that, don't take it personal. Just know, hey, I did my best to put the content on here. I made it very simple for folks to understand. I expounded on my talents, gifts, and skill sets. And you know what? They decided not to go with me. But that is their loss, not mine, right? You are valuable. You are worth having, like I said, a career that is meaningful, that makes you feel fulfilled, where you feel appreciated at your workplace. And if they can't offer that to you, or they can't recognize your skill sets, you know what? Go on to the next one then. So the brief history of a resume. Some of you will be kind of shocked and surprised at some of the stuff that I'll talk about in this. I know I definitely was, because I just kind of asked myself a basic research question of, what is a resume? Where did it come from? What is the history of it? Where did this superficial piece of document actually come from? So a brief history, the word resume is derived from a French word which means summary. There is no specific date or person that could be accredited to the invention of the modern day resume. However, we are able to see, though, the first recorded history of the resume. In 1482, Leonardo da Vinci wrote a letter to the Duke of Milan in an attempt to gain his patronage and support. Da Vinci's letter listed his skills and experiences to a potential patron. The same thing that we all do, really, as we go and search for jobs. Da Vinci's like, hey, I did all these nice paintings. Check this out. This is why you should hire me. Nonetheless, we do literally the same exact thing today. And I find that very fascinating. I'm sure most of you find that interesting as well. So what are the major components of a successful resume? It's important to break things down in a very simplistic way, okay? I would say this to everyone that's watching this video, keep it simple. Keep it very simple. We can grow in complexity over time, but keep things very simple, very easy to understand for folks. And I always put it this way: hiring managers and HR professionals, including myself, we are kind of a little slow in understanding you. What do I mean by that? We don't know you, and we don't know your talents and skill sets, okay? We don't know where you've worked, and so there might be acronyms that you might have had, that you've used in your industries and things like that. But to us, the lay HR person, we might not understand what that means. And so it is very important that you actually explain, list out, spell out what it is that you have done before. So we'll get into that right now. So there are 3 major components to a resume, okay? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in this order. You can flip-flop it depending on your strengths, right? So education is listed on top for me because I've gone to school for a long time, and so that's something that I would definitely talk about in the resume, just so folks can understand my background and experiences, okay? But there are 3 major components, which is education, your work experience, and ultimately your references, okay? Now, with education, at least for me, because I'm doing a doctorate program, right, it depends on each person, right? If you graduated with the high school diploma, that's great. Don't let anybody make you feel bad for that. That is a great accomplishment. You got a GED, that is a fantastic accomplishment, okay? Now, you might not necessarily put that at the top of the list. It could be on the bottom of the list, right? Education in today's workplace is a prereq, so to speak, right? We see them on the job listings where it says, qualifications, and typically the first bullet point that we see is education, okay? So for my case, I listed education maybe on top sometimes because it depends on the work setting that I'm going to be going into. If I'm going to apply to an academic institution, then I would list that. If I'm going to apply to a school district, I might list my education, right? That would be the quote-unquote bragging right to get into the door to have access to do what you feel like you'd be able to do in the company, okay? The second part is the work experience. Now, this is the juice right here. This is the good stuff, okay? Your work experience should not be just your job descriptions, okay? We've moved beyond that. Now, in older resumes, in the past 20 years, we might have seen that type of thing where we just list, our current jobs, job description. It's a copy paste. That's changed now. Now, I'm not saying we're going to completely get away with or do away with the listing of job descriptions, but what I am saying to you is this. We want to boast and brag. Yes, I'm saying it this way, boast and brag about what you accomplished. What did you do? All of us, in any capacity or job that we've had, have done something that was really innovative or new in our position, right? It could go from entry level all the way to this chief executive officer of the company. We all have done typically something innovative, a little bit more, right, to add a benefit to the company, okay? Talk about that. If you reduced expenses in your company from, 10% to 5%, that is a massive accomplishment. Massive accomplishment. Don't overlook that. List that out. If you create a new innovative product to be utilized at your company, list that out. Brag about it. Say, I reduced this. I created this. I did this. Now, I can hear some folks thinking, well, that's kind of self-centered. That's not a team player. You're still going to emphasize your collaboration with folks, right? So the word team player was popular about 10 to 15 years ago, but today now it's collaboration is the new popular word for teamwork, right? So you're going to see how it's basically the same word, but it's changed over time. It's evolved. So we went from teamwork to now collaboration. I'm a collaborator. I'm a creative collaborator, okay? Those are the buzzwords of today's time. People like seeing that. People like seeing innovation. People like seeing creativity. So boast and brag about that, right? And so you could do it a couple different ways, right? You can list out, basically for each job, you can list out a couple sentences that talked about the major accomplishments that you made, and then a couple bullet points of your responsibilities, not job description, but your responsibilities, okay? If you're a manager or supervisor, talk about the number of people that you supervise, talk about the number of managers that you did. Another big component I would like to say for those folks that are managers or supervisors out there, talk about your retention rates. Talk about what you did to retain a workforce that is innovative, that is healthy, right? Talk about what you did for that. Talk about culture and climate in the organization, right? If you have the power and the ability and authority, which we all do in some regards, in any position, entry level or chief exec, right? C-suite people, we all have the potential to have a workforce or create an environment that is collaborative, that is healthy, where folks feel like they're accepted, where folks feel like they can be appreciated, where folks feel like their values and their lived experiences are honored. We all have that in some regards. Now, if you're working at a place that doesn't offer that right now, my advice to you all is to start to look for the place that is. You don't deserve that. There are many companies and job places out there that deliberately want to hire you for your lived experience, for how you look, for where you come from your culture, from your race, from your religion, from whatever, right? They're wanting that diverse perspective, and they want to integrate it, right? They don't want to tolerate it, but they want to integrate it into the workplace. So start to look for those folks in those places, in spaces where that's where you can be heard and be validated, okay? So that's for work experience. And lastly, and these are just kind of high-level pockets, your references are huge. List those references. Now, sometimes there might be some argument in the field where it's like, well, I don't want to list my references and then have my boss find out that I'm applying for another job and they get mad at me about that. Like, okay, sometimes we have petty bosses. I get it. Okay. But if you have a good relationship with your supervisor or boss or manager, whomever, where you can give them a call for the reference, and you can list them, and they're okay with that, and they know that you're potentially looking for a new career opportunity, definitely list them out, okay? And furthermore, have them in your back pocket. Let's say you don't list your references on your resume, which is okay, right? You don't feel comfortable with that. Do what's comfortable for you. So don't do what I'm just telling you to do. Do what's comfortable for you. If you're not comfortable with that, then don't do it, right? Do what's comfortable for you, because you don't want to do something where you feel uncomfortable with it and you go ahead and do it, and now you feel uneasy about what you had just did, okay? But still, though, find those folks and those people in your back pocket that you can use as a reference. And this is how a reference works, and I'm just kind of breaking this down really simple and really short, okay? A reference is somebody that has seen you work and can vouch, right, for your skill sets and your talents that you're bragging about or you're talking about in the resume or in the interview process, okay? It's someone they can call up or email and say, hey, how is Dante? What did he do that's good at the company, right? What does Dante look like? Does he play nice with others? Is he rude or is he nice, right? Is he collaborative? Is he creative, right? It's someone you could pull out of your back pocket that can speak positively of you, okay? And if you don't have those references yet, don't worry about it. Take some time, really think through your Rolodex of folks and people that are in your life that you might be able to call up at some point and be like, hey, can I use you for a reference? I'm looking to apply for a job, okay? And another quick tip in regards to references, let it be a person that definitely will speak positively about you. If it's a person that's on the fence, like you don't quite know if they're gonna speak positive words about you, don't list them, because you don't necessarily know the folks' intentions, right? So you want people that are on your team that say that you're good, you're positive, and people should hire you hands down. Also, the second component of that is always call your references in advance before you apply for a job. I cannot say this enough. I've been a part of hundreds of interview panels, read thousands of resumes and stuff like that, have made numerous phone calls to folks, and nothing's more off-putting than if I'm a hiring manager or supervisor and I'm looking to call your references and you didn't bother to call them to at least remind them, hey, I'm applying for a job. Can you let them know who I am and what I'm about, okay? Nothing's worse than having a person you call for a reference and they're totally off guard. And it's just kind of a nice, I would say, sign of respect, just to say, hey, I'm gonna quick reminder. I mean, I know they're in your back pocket. I know they're your close, supervisors and coworkers and things like that. I know that, but it's just good common courtesy. It's like taking an exam, okay? We want to be prepped for our exam, right? If you're a teacher, you want your students to be prepped. If you're a good teacher, right, you want your students to be prepped for your exam. And same thing there, you want your reference to be prepped for what's about to happen. Some of the questions that might get asked, the job you're applying for, the company you're applying for, some things they might ask them. Give them as much background as possible so when they get that phone call, they're prepared for it. I can't tell you the number of times where I had folks call me for a reference check, and I'm like, I don't remember who you're talking about, because the person never bothered to call me. I mean, I gave them my number, but they didn't bother to call me to let me know, hey, Dante, can I use you for a reference? So that's very important. It's just kind of a courtesy thing. Also, too, with the references, the third part I'd like to be able to expound on is with your references, you want to be able to list your supervisor as a reference. I cannot say this enough. You must, and I know I'm saying this very strong, but you must have at least one supervisory reference on your resume. Some type of boss, supervisor, director, whomever, someone you reported to directly that can talk very closely and intimately about your work ethic, and what you've done, okay? I've seen this a lot. It's kind of a red flag, where you apply for a job, you got 4 or 5 references, but on none of those references, you've listed a supervisor. On none of them. You didn't list a supervisor on one. Why is that? Is the question that every HR person's asking. It's like, why are they not listing their boss, the person who's doing their evaluations? Now, to be fair, some supervisors are not good supervisors. Some managers are not good managers, and some directors are not good directors, okay? I totally get that. But in your Rolodex, once again, don't call those folks. If they're not good, don't call them. But in your Rolodex, you should have at least one person at least one person that you can say, I can call them at any point in time, and they will be able to vouch for my work and help me get that job I'm looking for. So this is just an example of my resume that I've done. You might notice a couple things that are different. I put my face on the resume, right? And this is, once again, something that is to consider and not necessarily a directive. And I will say this again, do what makes you feel comfortable. Do not do only what I am saying to you, okay? I felt comfortable putting my face on my resume because I want people to know who they're about to hire, okay? And if they can't accept me for what I look like and who I am, then I don't want to work for your company anyway, and you're going to miss out on that. So there, okay? So for me, I listed and put my face on it. But notice how spaced out it is. Really, it's not like, you know, line. Those days are over. Please do not do that. If you put, you know, Times New Roman, 8-point font, italics, forget it. People are going to look at it and go, this is a complete eyesore. They're not going to want to look at it. It is psychologically and visually pleasing to read this type of resume. Now, this is one type, okay? You can choose the type you want, but this is the type that I've noticed is more nuanced and popular in today's terms from my professional experience. You notice that I have an executive summary where I basically just say, really short and succinct, this is who I am and this is what I want to do for me. It's the sales pitch on the piece of paper, okay? And then you see on the left-hand side, I list out my areas of actual expertise. Another point to expound on is, please, I beg you, please, do not list expertise that you are not an expert in. Because when they hire you and they see areas of expertise, they're expecting that when they hire you and you sit down in the seat and you get your computer and laptop, they're going to look and they're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to need you to start doing this social media marketing and stuff like right away. I'm going to need you to start doing the talent acquisition stuff like right away. We're short 25 people when we need to get school running, okay? That's the type of thing that they're going to be asking you. So if you're claiming to be an expert, they're going to expect on day one for you to know how to do that job. Now, there's a little bit of a learning curve when you figure out how do you do your area of expertise in the company, of course. There's still a learning curve there. But however, they're still going to expect that you have a deep level of competency in areas that you list as expertise. So, you know, if I got like 6 or 8 on there, but those are things I can do day one, wherever I go, I can get that established and set up. I blocked out my references just to keep their information confidential. I don't want them to get a phone call after you all watching this video, but they're great people who I list as my reference. And so I just kind of talk about some of the places that I've worked at and some job places that I've gone to. Notice I've talked about, when you have some time to really look at it, I talk a lot about I created this. I made this, I developed this, I implemented this, right? It speaks to the managerial and director level type of competency that I possess, okay? I'm not boasting or bragging, I'm saying that's just why it is that way. And so for you all, think through, once again, what you did and what you accomplished specifically, okay? And then I just went from chronologically, so always start from top, your current role, all the way down empirically over time, right? So I started with my current role, my current position, right? I didn't list CEO, I just listed a job I was doing. List that and then go all the way down chronologically, okay? Another point that's very important and vital is that you want to be able to list the month and the year, okay? And ideally, there's no gaps of employment, ideally, but if there is, please be prepared to talk about why is there a gap of employment, okay? Let's say you're a stay-at-home mom, okay? You know, you were a stay-at-home mom for the past, 8 years. You're looking to get back in the market. You had a bachelor's degree in marketing or communications or whatever, and you're looking to get back into the field because your children are getting old enough to take care of themselves. Okay, that's fine. That's your life choice and decision. It shouldn't be held against you. Now, be prepared to expound on why you were a stay-at-home mom, and furthermore, you also want to make sure that you are, and now they shouldn't be asking you why are you a stay-at-home mom. Like, they shouldn't be asking you those types of questions because they're inappropriate and they're not pertinent to the thing. But in the back of their head, they're going to be wondering, why was there a gap of employment? Now, you could tell them your story if you feel comfortable with it. Like, you know what, I was a stay-at-home mom. I made a decision, my spouse and myself, to stay at home with our child and raise my child. But however, in that time, I've been abreast to what's been happening in the market of communications. And I know what's happening, and I'm ready and prepared to get back into the market market, okay? I'm very viable, and I've learned a lot learning patience to work with my child, and I can definitely do that in this workplace setting as well. I just made that up, but it's something, once again, that you could kind of talk about. You want to make it seem like, you weren't just sitting for 8 years not learning. No, you were current with what was happening. You just made a life decision that was good for you and your family, and that's perfectly fine, and that's okay. So this is my resume, just as a practical example that you can use as a template to model. There is a website called canva.com where you can get free resume templates. This is a golden nugget for you all out there. It's canva.com, canva.com. They have nice resume templates as well that you can use. You can also find these on like a Microsoft Office as well. And you can also utilize, Google search, type in Google templates. I think even Google has some resume examples, something similar to this as well. But my bread and butter is at canva.com. All three of those are free for you, okay? So definitely take some time to take a look at those if you're pressed for cash. So I got an interactive session for you all that I want you to think about as you start writing your resume, okay? And I'm going to talk to you in this particular way in space. Before you even write your resume or create your resume or update your resume, I want you to start to think about what makes you a good employee, like what makes you a good person, like fundamentally, okay? Start thinking from this mindset. And the reason I'm saying like what makes you awesome, the reason I am saying this to you is because our society, unfortunately, we have really placed a onus on false humility, right? Like, someone gives you a compliment like, hey, that's a really nice t-shirt you got on today. We go, it's okay, it's not that great. No, time out. That's a great, nice shirt. You tell them thank you for acknowledging your shirt, and that's good. Own that compliment, okay? Own it. It's okay. You don't have to be afraid of accepting a compliment. But you notice in today's society that it's almost like, it's taboo to talk about yourself in a positive light. Well, if you're going to create a resume that lands you your job, we have to think about what are those positive attributes that we have that makes us special, right? I mean, it goes beyond hard worker, right? Because everyone puts like hard worker, team worker, on their resume. But something more, something special, something unique about you, that little X factor. That's what we want to get to, and that's why we're going to do this interactive session so we can start to think about ourselves in a positive aspect, in a positive light. So, really quick, this is just a document that I've used. You can go back and watch this video and this film and take a look at this. But really, when you start, think about what type of job you're looking for, okay? And like I said, it's a dream job, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's within your reach at this current point in time, but it's something that you want to aspire to in the future. And that's okay to dream, because dreams, once you put action to them, come into fruition, okay? So start to think about what type of job you're looking for, okay? And then just write it out, or jobs that you're looking for, okay? And then what qualities do you possess? Now, I want to expand it other than just like job qualities, right? Because some people think like, oh, what qualities do I have? Oh, I'm prompt. I'm a hard worker. I can do this. I've worked at this company for 15 years. But let's get a little bit broader, okay? Let's broaden the scope. What qualities do you possess, right? So if you say you're a hard worker, talk about your dedication. Provide an example of what types of dedication that you've expressed to people. As off the top of my head, I'm thinking, if someone's saying that, I'm a hard worker and I'm dedicated, I would say like, I really care about the work that I do and I have a great level of pride in completing tasks and assignments. When I do a project, whether it be at home or in a community event or volunteer, I really care about people and I really care about what they do. You see how that feels much more stronger than just saying, I'm a hard worker. But you painted an illustration for people to understand the depth of what makes you a hard worker. And you're tapping into the emotions that we have as people, right? And that's very important and very vital, right? So think about what qualities do you possess. There's no right or wrong answer for this, folks. Just taking some time to really think about in a broad context what makes you a good person, right? And if you don't know at this current point in time, don't worry about it. it's actually very common, like I said, because we don't really think about ourselves in a positive mindset consistently and continually, okay? But throughout your day, throughout your week, really think about, man, what makes me good? What makes me a great person, just in general? And then we can get really specific with those good personality traits that we have. Then it can get really then down the nitty-gritty when it comes to a job. And so, ultimately, the next question is, why should someone hire me? Right? Now, like I said, don't do the generic. That's generic to say I'm a hard worker and I'm dedicated. Why should someone really hire you? So if you're thinking off the top of your head, well, because I'm a hard worker and I'm dedicated. If you said something like this or thought something like this, I'm willing to go literally the extra mile to complete my tasks and my jobs that I'm doing. I take a great level of honor and pride in my work that I do, because my work represents me, my family, my work represents my community. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure that I represent myself and all of them in a positive mindset. Way different than just saying I'm a hard worker. Way, way different. If you get to the chance to get an interview, you say something like that, oh my God, they're going to look at you like you're this amazing person. Because why? You've tapped into the emotional aspect. And when you're writing this piece of paper, you're tapping into this emotional aspect as well. When they're reading this very fine, very high level type of document, when they're reading it and they can see, wow, this person really does take a great deal of pride in the work that they do. And then, what would the company get from you if they decided to hire you, okay? Now, I hear many different stereotypes about many different work generations, okay? I'm sure you all have heard those too. We got the baby boomers, those folks are starting to retire. We got the Gen Xers, right, who think that they're the hard workers. We got the Gen Y, the millennials that are like, we don't need to work as hard as you all because we are innovative, okay? Then we got the next generation of Gen Z coming up. So unfortunately, there's stereotypes out of all those work groups. And so I really want to debunk those stereotypes, that there's positive and negative, generalities and qualities of every group, okay? And there's more positive, I believe, in each particular group. It's just expounding on those positive notes, okay? If you're a millennial, it doesn't mean that, because you're in this classification as a millennial that you're lazy, that you don't want to work, okay? It doesn't mean that. There are plenty of millennials, including myself, who are in this category that actually work very hard. I work very long hours. I'm very dedicated to the work that I do. But I'm a millennial. It's almost like a contradiction, because ultimately it's a stereotype. I think good workers are good workers. I think good employees are good employees. I think good bosses are good bosses. And their age group, I think, can be irrelevant at times, right? As long as they're proficient and good at the job that they do. But ultimately, we want to say, what is in it for the employer to hire me, okay? What's in it for the employer to hire me? Why do they want to hire me, right? They got 50 different applicants. Why should they hire me, specifically me? Like, what would make the company maybe perhaps make more money, save money, right? Or maybe have a better customer service experience? All those types of things. Be thinking about like those unique qualities, okay? And that's why I'm saying from this humanistic aspect, it's so important to think about yourself in a positive light before you even start writing your resume, because if not, you'll keep saying generic things that everyone else is saying, but not say the things that are most pertinent to you, or the things that are really unique about you, which is every hiring manager wants that. We want something unique, and we want something positive. And lastly, the last question is, simply put, what makes you awesome? Really, like, blow it up. What makes me awesome? And not in this, don't hold back when you're filling this part out, you're thinking about, like, what makes you a good person? What makes you a contributing member to society? What makes you someone that people want to be around because you're so positive, or you're so truthful, you're so compassionate, right? You're so honest. What are those qualities, right? Name them, call them out. And once you go through this worksheet, now you can then begin the process of writing that resume that works. So, really quick, I want to talk about some tips and tricks for you all. I listed some kind of funny images on the background. Those are okay written resumes, actually, but I think James Bond should have expounded a little bit on some of his accomplishments that he had as well. So the first tip is, when you write your resume, speak to what you accomplished, right? In other words, What's the juice, right? What have you actually done? What have you actually accomplished, right? That's so important to put that on this document as to what did you do that the company did not have before, but when they hired you and added you to the team, you brought this special element. What are those things that you did, okay? Secondly, make sure there are no typos. This literally is a deal breaker, okay? And I would say this, if your grammatical skills aren't quite up to par where you think they should be or need to be, definitely have someone proofread your document, okay? It's very important. There's also another application that I use from my computer. I feel like I'm advertising for these companies, but these tools really are very helpful. Grammarly.com is another free thing. It's a grammar tool that I've used and I've had other folks use, but it really kind of gives you some pointers when you are writing documents and things like that. But make sure you're having someone proofread your document. It's so important, because if you don't capitalize your title at your job, or you put a comma in the wrong space, you don't put a period at the end of your sentences, or maybe you don't have a period at the end of your job descriptions and then you decide to add a period. Those are all markers that people will use, unfortunately, against you in this Americanized society that we live in. Like, it's so important that, it all looks formal and it all looks and flows in a copacetic and simplistic manner, so it's easy to read. There's no typos, okay? Because people read typos as potential incompetencies, which isn't necessarily true, but unfortunately people assume that, because if you didn't put a period at the end of the sentence, I wonder what else you're going to skip out on, right? That's the thought that they have running through their mind, but it's not necessarily true. But unfortunately, folks do use that as a marker to put someone out and not get them in for the resume or the interview process. Like I said, use those free templates. There's no need to recreate the wheel. Sometimes it's very daunting to look at a blank canvas. I'm sure the artists out there would know and could talk to you, or even a writer. Nothing's more frustrating for me where I have to write a paper or a document and it's completely blank. There's nothing on it. It's very, very intimidating. So don't reinvent the wheel. Use those free templates that are there. Like I said, go to the Microsoft, go to the Google, use the Canva.com. Those are all free templates, and you can just plug and play those stuff. You can of course hire myself or a professional resume writer to do it for yourself, but maybe you can't afford that. That's fine. Then you have this knowledge and information where you can put that on there. Look at some examples on Google, for instance, too, as well, some good examples. But just get as much content or ideas as you can. But just make sure that you're using the free template. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars. I mean, there's companies out there that charge thousands of dollars for a resume. You don't necessarily have to pay thousands of dollars to get a nice resume that gets you a job you're wanting to do. There's actually a number of free templates that you can use. Now, this next tip is a general rule of thumb. So try not to go over 1 to 2 pages, right? And I say this because we should be able to talk about what we are, what we've done in a very clear and concise manner. I've seen many resumes that don't use this rule of thumb. I saw a resume at one point in time that had like 6 pages on it, and it was fluff. It didn't tell us, the hiring manager, the hiring team, of like their competencies. It didn't explain that at all. It didn't expound on that at all, unfortunately. It's so important that, once again, for those 4 to 6 seconds that those people's hiring managers, those HR professionals are looking at your resume, those 4 to 6 seconds should tell them very clearly and very succinctly of how talented you are and what makes you a good fit for the company. And so if you're putting too much fluff in it and don't get right to the point, they're going to put you in the no pile, and you want to be in the yes pile. So make it where it's about 1 to 2, maybe no more than 3 pages, ideally. In some contexts, man, folks have to write a little bit longer resume because they've been working for such a long. If you've been working 40 years in an industry, maybe you do have to expound on that as well. But general rule of thumb, about 1 to 2 pages, 3 pages at max, and it should be a compact, jam-packed 3 pages of content where they're reading through and they're like, wow, this person is definitely qualified for this job. So at this point, we'll skip the Q&A and kind of just get right up and wrap up with this workshop. So definitely stay in contact and touch with us. I thank you for your time just to watch this video and take a look at it and explore your next job opportunity. You can go to our website, www.ventllc.net, or you can feel free to give me a phone call at any point in time and just let me know, hey, I saw your workshop, man, just looking for some additional information, and I would be glad to stay in contact and touch with you and help you through that as well. And then you can check us out on our social media outlets as well. We have a Facebook page and a LinkedIn page. And, you know, I'm very personable. I'm not one of those CEOs that are hiding behind a desk. You know, that's not how I roll. I love helping people. I have a passion to help people. And I want folks to feel successful. I want folks to feel empowered. I want folks to feel like they're able to literally get that next job that they're looking for. So let's stay in touch. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to hearing from you all. Thanks.